Prynhawn HB History evening. Some of you might be listening from all over the world, so pop in where you're listening from. So it could be Borodar, good day, Prynhawn, good afternoon or good evening, and Nostar if you're at night time, good night. Now tonight we have two amazing guests, and we're going to be talking first to Anthony Olasiende from Always an Alternative, and we're going to be talking about knife crime. And it's sort of some of the campaigns he's done about anti-knife crime. Now, this is something that I was really excited to get him on to talk about, because I'm moving from primary. I'm primary deputy head at the moment to secondary alternative provision, and I already know that in the community, and I'll be talking to him about it. It's in South Wales, and Wales, Gwent, in part of Wales, has seen a 20% increase in knife crime sort of over the past year or so. South Wales, 9% increase in knife crime. And of course, children in alternative provision, they're not in the mainstream classrooms for a reason. They may be on their way to pupil referral units, depending on how well that provision can support them, but certainly they're at risk. So I'm really interested in picking his brains about what I should be doing in the classroom, what I should be doing with those pupils to try and combat some of this carrying of knives and using of knives that we are potentially seeing an increase of. So we've got that on our first half, and then in the second half we've got Mr. Beasy. And again, not that I'm using this platform entirely just to support my professional development. Hopefully it will support your practice as well. We're going to be talking to Mr. Beasy, who's going to be, I'm going to be asking him some questions about motivating pupils, about, finding that drive. His motto is no grind, no glory. And again, in a secondary school setting, I'm imagining, particularly in alternative provision within secondary, that there's going to be some pupils there who need some help with being motivated, some help achieving their goals. So again, I'm going to be picking his brains about it. I can see a few more people entering the studio there. Croeso, welcome. If you want to give me a message about where you're from, I'm really interested. I have put that welcome to Swansea. I'm actually in Basingstoke in the week, and I'm in Basingstoke tonight. It is hot here, and it has been crazy, I will say. I wonder, how some of the other people have found it around the world. In Basingstoke and Dean, we've got 27 primaries, and 15 of those have reported positive COVID cases in the past 10 days. And we've got 11 secondary schools, and 5 of those have reported positive cases in the last 10 days. So we're looking at about 50% of our schools. So it is, bubbles popping. So, if you're somewhere, let me know if elsewhere in the country it's going. HB History there saying my form 29 students down to 7 from tomorrow. Wow. So that's like a quarter. God, this is putting my maths, like a quarter of them left. Wow, that is, yeah, as I say, maybe you've got an opinion on where we're going. Obviously, the new guidance came out last night. I've read through it. It is a bit surprising. Anyone who's been looking at it, obviously, we've gone from, 100 pages of guidance down to, I think it was 16 pages we now have of guidance. So certainly a lot less restrictions we're looking at end of this year into next year. So again, that's something maybe we'll get onto, but I'm just looking through to see if Anthony is in there. I can't see a name that is putting the coming up that shows me it's Anthony. So Anthony, if you're there, press the call in button. Not out of the woods yet. New health sec, new guidance. Yeah, HB History. I think my school finishes midweek. I think the 19th it is. And we are hoping that we can just get past that point. But yeah, I think some people might have a little bit longer. So obviously, Anthony, if you join us, hit that call in button and I'll add you to the call. Just while we wait, we're going to pop to an advert and I will see you on the other side.
Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsier puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.cre8tiveresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TTRadio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
And Croeso Abatawi, welcome to the Twilight Show. I've got Ant, he's calling in, Anthony's calling in, so I'm just going to add him to the call. Right, Anthony, you should, any second now, be able to start speaking. I should hear you. Hiya, welcome to the show. No, it's great to have you on. Now, just before you sort of joined us, I was audience, and I was sort of setting the scene of why I really wanted to talk to you on tonight's show. And what it is, currently I'm a primary school deputy head, and I think, I will kind of ask you about when we should start talking about knife crime, maybe a little later on. But I'm moving to an alternative provision. So in a secondary school, so basically children who struggle to be in a mainstream environment, and often that's a polite way of putting it. So the children that I'm going to be working with are possibly on their way to a pupil referral unit. The school is trying to support them, but as you can imagine, and I think our listeners maybe will imagine, knife crime is potentially a risk. And I was talking about, I pulled off some of the Office for National Statistics stats, and it says that in parts of Wales, we're looking at currently at a 20% increase in knife crime. And so, obviously part of me wanting to have you on was kind of me taking this opportunity to professionally pick your brains about kind of the things that I should be doing that possibly other educators should be doing to try and combat this. Is that all right? Superb. Now, I will just remind everyone who's listening in, you can text in or you can call in and join the call if you have questions. Obviously, you can message us on our Twitter feed and you can always listen back at ttradio.org and you can listen back to all of our shows there if you've missed them. First of all, I've obviously in the research for this show, I read a bit up on you, and I wanted to start with that, kind of find out about you, the person, Anthony, the man, before we started talking about knife crime, because I found some of it really interesting. Can you talk us through a bit, sort of, about where you come from, your educational background? Yeah, 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 mm, yeah, 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 right, yeah. Yeah, I think so. And one of the things that interests me about that, and as I say, I'm moving to this alternative provision setting. Is, I mean, it's really positive. Your story is amazing, positive in that. But as an educational profession, I feel like a bit like, oh, you've had to do that on your own. You know, we like at some point, and for me in my role, I guess I'm hoping to be able to step in a bit earlier to mean it doesn't need so much work on your part. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree, and that's part of my, I guess, my philosophy. One of the reasons I was really interested in talking to you, and part of the move for me to go back to alternative provision. I started out my career in pupil referral units with children who really, it was their last chance of formal education. Um, but I think you're right. There has changed a bit. I'm going to ask you maybe a bit of a contentious question a bit later on, and we'll get onto it. About, I've just sent it out on Twitter to see what people come back. About whether in the some of the Ofsted guidance that came out or into their report, they talked about immediate permanent exclusions for knife carrying, um, and I think we'll get onto that right at the end. That's kind of my most contentious question I've got for you at the end, about where we go with that. And as someone who's been through some of the tougher parts of the educational system and made a success of it afterwards, I think I'd really value your kind of thoughts on that, because we tie ourselves in knots in the educational community. Right, so let's get into the kind of the bits about where you went after that. So you'd kind of taken on the educational challenge. You'd got what you wanted. You'd set up a business, and you saw a problem in your community, or you were affected by it, you chose to. Mm, yeah, right. Yeah, to pick up on, and it kind of applies to teaching, I think, specifically. And how do I word this nicely? And I don't want to offend any listeners sort of listening in, but sometimes as a profession, we are from a middle class, safe background, um, and maybe there aren't people, or enough people in teaching who maybe understand what it is like for some young people, or what it is like for some families. Um, and do you see that in working with children? You say that you're able to relate to them. Is there a gap in education that maybe we aren't able to relate enough, or we aren't there enough? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. As I say, like um, my interest in it comes from the fact that I trained in South Wales, and South Wales itself has incredibly high rates of poverty, and some of the schools I was working in were some of the most impoverished parts of some of the most impoverished parts of that country. And so I saw it, and and at the time, and you're right, I used to walk around the estates. I used to, go out and speak to people. And you're right, outside the school gates is a different world sometimes, I think. So sort of moving on to that, we've talked around some of the solutions, but I wanted to kind of ask them more, what is this culture of knife carrying? Is it a fear? Is it, I don't want to get into, I remember when I was a child, listening to Ice Cube and Eazy-E and people saying that should be banned. And then I remember, 20 years later, people saying Eminem should be banned. And, I don't want it, but is that part of it, or is it a fear, or is it gang related, or, where does this come from? Or is it more complicated than that? Mm, yeah, and I think you dropped out there slightly. Um, but I can't remember where I read it, or maybe it was a story, but I remember seeing about sort of, obviously if you're in fear, you're carrying a knife, then you're obviously more likely to use a knife, even by accident or in reaction, because the knife is out there. So I guess my next question, leading on from that, is, what sort of knives are you seeing when you're collecting them? Are they, kitchen knives? Are we talking about, machetes? Are we talking about military knives? What sort of thing is out there? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Anthony, we just had a caller there. Steve, I think their tag is try and call in. Steve, if you want to try and call in again, and if you want to ask a question, or if any of other listeners want to either text in a message or a question, or try and join the chat, we're more than happy to kind of have you in. This is Teachers Talk Radio, so if you want to join the conversation, you can try again there, Steve. So Anthony, what you were sort of saying there is it like, I guess part of the social media is playing into that as well. Then, if they're seeing it on TikTok, if they're seeing it online, there's that arms race of, who needs a bigger knife. I guess we've talked around some of the challenges, and some of where it comes from, I guess. So if I'm in class from September, I've got children who I think are in a community that is going to be at risk of this, just by nature of they've already not had a good time in mainstream. It's a deprived area as well, and I want to do something positive, to kind of not combat, it's maybe a wrong word, but to approach this, to address this. what sort of things can I be doing with groups of children? Yeah. Sorry, I honestly was there just kind of nodding along at that point and trying to kind of go, wow. I so I'm going to have those conversations, I guess. And my next question, leading on from that, okay. So for me, I always sort of compare these sort of things to things like sex education. Now, sex education, we don't start when children start having sex. We start it before, and in fact we start some form of it, a relationship kind of education, down in primary school. And am I getting them too late at 14, 15? Do we need to start addressing this maybe with our primary school pupils, or is there a risk then that we've opened them up too early? Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask you there about, and this, I guess, maybe ties into your sort of security background, I guess. But you talked there about sort of non-violent crisis, intervention. And that is something that, I myself have done what we call restraint training or physical intervention training, but nature of the environments I work in. But a significant part of that was not the physical stuff. It was the mental stuff that came beforehand. And is that something that we need to teach children, how to deal with threats and challenges in a non-violent way, or how to deal with conflict in a non-violent way? Yeah. Sorry, yeah, Anthony. There, I think we just. Oh, yeah, you just dropped out. Yeah, you just dropped out slightly there. Yeah. Uh, Yeah, you're back. Just a couple of patches there, but I think we've got it. Yeah, yeah, that's all right, Anthony. I can hear you. You patch in and out there slightly. Uh, yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you as well about your book. You've written a book, One Knife, Many Lives, and that I guess is a different approach to tackling the same problem. And so you've taken obviously the direct action of putting the boxes out there. You've taken another route of kind of the working with young people specifically, and you've got the book as well. What's the kind of thought process behind the book? What are you hoping to achieve with the book, and what's it about? I guess. Yeah, and I think that's something that I guess we don't talk about very much when we talk about these things, and it will lead me on to my sort of final question for you that I sort of said at the start about exclusions. But we don't necessarily think when we see a young person in trouble, or we see a young person, we don't think about that network around them, those people around them, that actually this one life has sort of many links. And when it comes to knife crime, we might see a child who we label in one way or another that they're part of a gang or that they shouldn't be carrying a knife, and that actually that's what you get if you go out to the street like that. But actually there's a network around them of people that this affects, isn't there? Yeah, I mean, certainly, in my research for this, as I say, I found some stats on Welsh knife crime, which is, where I'm going to be working. But certainly, a lot of the narrative around it seems to be London focused, specifically, and gang related, London focused about that. Do you notice that? I know obviously you're based in Sheffield. Do you notice a kind of London narrative around a lot of the reporting on this? I think, do you know what? I'm sorry. I'm just writing down the victim's name is not on that blade, and I'm stealing that if that's okay. I'm having that, but that's going into my lesson. It is not on that blade because I think that that is something that I think should sort of get that idea home. I think, or will help to. Um, Now, it leads us on to sort of my final question, I guess, and this is a contentious one, even within teachers. There are groups of teachers who believe no one should ever be excluded, and there are groups of people who think, we should be really strict on it. Now, obviously, my point of view is I generally work with people on the edge of exclusion or people who have been excluded. So, that's where I sit. But specifically with knives, do you think it should be hardline, immediate exclusion? Is that something that will solve this problem? Yeah. 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 Listen, Anthony, it's been fabulous talking to you. Like I've taken so much away from this, and I will say to people that you've got the website Always an Alternative. Yeah, if people want to find out more about what you do, and obviously on Twitter, your Ant's Journey. And I've been tweeting that out so people can find you there as well about what you've done. Now, thank you so much. We're going to have to go to some news and things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect you. Again, thank you so much. The takeaway for me was that the victim's name is not on the blade, and and also that the title of your book, One Knife, Many Lives, I think is such a powerful thing to kind of explain to people the ripple effects, like you say, of the damage this can do. Listen, thank you so much, man. That is brilliant. Fantastic. Right. We are going to go to the news. So I'll pop it on, and we will see you on the other side.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teacher Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn. The government has launched a consultation setting out proposed changes to improve training to develop world-class teachers. Government proposals aim to introduce new high-quality training courses which are intended to drive up standards of teacher training. The recommendations also propose a new accreditation process, new intensive school placements, and high-quality mentoring for trainees. School Standards Minister Nick Gibbs said, "Supporting our teachers with the highest quality training and professional development is the best way in which we can improve pupil outcomes and is central to the government's levelling up agenda. We want this country to be the best place to become a great teacher, and that starts with high quality initial teacher training." The proposed changes would build upon the ambitious reforms the government has implemented to create a golden thread of training, support and professional development informed by high quality evidence which will run through each phase of a teacher's career. The government in England is easing rules on self-isolation for the fully vaccinated and the under 18s. People from within these categories will, after the 16th of August, no longer have to self-isolate if they come into contact with a coronavirus case. They will be advised to take a coronavirus test, but that will not be compulsory. Following concerns about large groups of children being forced to miss out on education if cases were detected, the bubble system in schools is to be scrapped. Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary for England, said, "We recognise that the system of bubbles and isolation is causing disruption to many children's education." According to the Department for Education statistics, around 640,000 state school pupils, 8.5% of England's total, did not attend class for COVID-related reasons on July the 1st. Alan Crosby, Head of English at James Gillespie High School in Edinburgh, has told the EIS that they will drop To Kill a Mockingbird from its curriculum due to its white saviour motif and cancel Of Mice and Men because both books' lead characters are not people of colour. These efforts to decolonise the curriculum have, however, met with some resistance, with Calvin Robinson, a policy advisor to the Department of Education, stating in the Telegraph, "Teachers are not just reading the books, they are teaching English literature. We can talk about the use of the N-word and why it is not appropriate for anyone to use. I think it's ridiculous to cancel the books because of it." This has been your daily education news briefing.
And Croeso e Abertawe, welcome to Swansea, welcome to the Wednesday Twilight Show with me, Nathan Ginn, on Teachers Talk Radio. Now, we've just been talking to Big Ant, Anthony Olasende, about knife crime, and we are shortly going to be talking to Mr. Beasy about motivating pupils and what we can do to support that. So Mr. Beasy, if you are in the studio, feel free to hit that call in button and I will let you onto the call. Oh, someone there. Let's see. Let's invite it in and let's see if this is the man himself. Hello. Yeah, no, yeah. I have to say I was a little bit worried about who was coming through, but it's you. Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. Have you been in the studio long? Did you hear much of Anthony Olasende before we started? Really interesting. And do you know what? As I was reading more on him, some of the things that we're going to talk about, just him as a person, must really tie in with some of that the drive and that sort of going to seeing his goals and achieving his goals and not letting anything stand in the way of his goals must really relate with the kind of things that you're going to be talking about, right? Overcoming those barriers. Right. So, as I say, I set the scene for Anthony and I'll set the scene for you. I'm currently, I'm a primary school deputy head, but I'm moving to alternative provision in a school in South Wales, alternative provision is sort of that step, children who have struggled in mainstream schooling at secondary level, and so are maybe getting a slightly different provision. Okay, so one of the things, obviously, with the children that I'm expecting is somewhat of a lack of motivation, a lack of drive, maybe a lack of direction. And so I was really interested in, as I said to him, I do kind of, slightly abuse my platform on this show to get my own CPD and professional development done. So I'm hoping to kind of pick your brains about those things. But to start off, can you tell us, in your own words, a little bit about what you do? Yeah, no, I really like that. I think I can really see how that having the same message but a different voice, a different style can maybe help, drive that home. So I guess, my next question is kind of, how did you get into it then? What was your background? Were you like a overly motivated child, or, how did you find this as a passion? Yeah. Yeah, certainly. And I can relate to that. And I guess my question there would be, when you're working with those children, do you see sort of one type of demotivation? And I only ask that sort of as personally, I was at school, and hold my hands up there. I lost interest, and I unfortunately turned it around a lot later in my life, and decided found a love of education, and then found that education was for me, a bit like your sort of story there. But at school I wasn't motivated. I was academically allegedly smart, but I just wasn't interested. Now, I guess, do you see children across a range? What is this demotivation kind of looking like? Is it kids who maybe are struggling at school, kids who aren't struggling at school, kids who are daydreaming about being football stars? Yeah, and I think I can relate to that. And I think part of the bit you touched on there that I think is that this, as educators, and I'll use the educational phrase for it, we would say that motivation is domain specific. You could be motivated in maths, but not be motivated in PE. You could be motivated at home. And I think you're right. I see so many children, particularly working in alternative provision, so which is kind of a step before pupil referral units and PRUs, that you see children who are labelled as demotivated, but I know for a fact that they work all weekend on a builder's yard with their uncle, being incredibly motivated about the thing that they want to do. But we just haven't learned, maybe, or they haven't learned, we haven't connected in making that work for the things we need them to do. Yeah. I wanted to kind of touch on the point that, obviously, like I shared with, colleagues, family, I was having you on. You've actually been into my sister's school, I believe. And she was the one who recommended that I look you up when I was way back following different people on Twitter. But what you do or how you frame it is more than just a pep talk. It's not confidence, is it? It's not that they're lacking necessarily confidence. It's framing it as a process of motivation of, you do this to achieve this. Yeah, I really like that. This framing of, that it's a simpler thing. It's not flashy success. It's kind of more of a, I don't know, more of like a humble, normal success of achieving, a good life, not just flashy things. I wanted at that point to touch on, I know you're saying no grind, no glory, and then I wanted to kind of tie that in with, I guess, our current generations. Do you feel, sort of talking to groups, do you think there's a lack of either motivation or willingness to put in the hard work? Do they want it just all now? Or Yeah, and I think that is something that maybe gets missed out sometimes, particularly as you're right. In our current culture, there is an opportunity where people can become famous overnight, or can be doing things, and maybe some of that hard work isn't shown, the behind the scenes work of how many hours training or how much time studying actually went into to be able to do something. Um, Another thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is just part that really interests me, is you do a little bit of work with improving sort of pupils' public speaking, or their ability to public speak. Yeah, I think we're just losing you. You're dropping in and out of the signal there. Yeah, yeah, we can hear you now. You just dropped in and out a second there. Yeah, and I suppose that's a great opportunity for you to just mention to the listeners. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and it is tune in and talk it out. So if you want to press that call in button and ask myself or Mr. Beasy a question, you can press that call in button and join us, or you can text in and send that message in and we'll answer it. But maybe you want to try your public speaking um, as a listener and join us live on the radio. I will ask you, yeah, I will ask you there as well, is obviously I've been doing these shows, I've been talking to people, and there are teachers out there as well who have a similar fear, and I think people maybe misinterpret what it's like to be a teacher and stand in front of a class of children. And I know teachers who the idea of talking on the radio would horrify them, when they've spent all day talking in front of 30 adults. And what we often talk about in teaching is a thing called imposter syndrome, where you almost feel like you're not, it's not, you're not worthwhile. And I guess a bit like you've sort of said, that you're not going to be listened to, or maybe what you're going to say has no value. And so we talk about it as imposter syndrome. So do you think there's a possibility the staff would benefit from support on not just the motivation element of what you do, but also some of the public speaking element? All right, so I'm gonna like push you on this point. I've got a new class. I'm meeting them in September. I want to relate. We've heard from Anthony earlier about my need to relate to pupils to get my powerful messages across. Okay, so if there's these kind of little tips, rapport building things, what would be an example of something like that? That's one of the sort of things that you might cover off. That's a way to build rapport with an audience, for instance, or between two people when you're doing public speaking. That is a fantastic kind of piece of advice for me, moving into my new role, changing schools, but also I think for anyone listening, sort of dealing with new classes as they meet me in September. Listen, Mr. Beasley, it's been fantastic talking to you. It's been so amazing and full of such nuggets of little bits of wisdom that I'm going to take away with me, and particularly some of that rapport building and the importance of, giving this opportunity for our kids and listening to them, I guess, and finding out what their goals are. And I really like that idea of giving them not humble goals is maybe the wrong word, but giving them kind of clear but simple goals. It's not about a mansion, it's about making your mum proud. It's not about showing them all of the hard work that goes into achieving something. So listen, thank you so much for coming on. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Listen, we're going to go to some adverts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute you, and then I have to unceremoniously eject you from the call. But it has been wonderful. Listen, it's been fab. Thank you for coming on, and we're going to head off. All right. Cheers, man. Ta-ra. Right, and so off we go to little adverts. I'll see you on the other side.
Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club.
Croeso e Abertawe, welcome to Swansea, welcome to the Twilight Show on a Wednesday on Teachers Talk Radio with me, Nathan Ginn. And we are coming to the end, we are wrapping up, but to let me cover off some of the things we've talked about, we have had Anthony Olasende talking about knife crime and the importance of it. Now, he is an anti-knife crime campaigner in Sheffield, and he told us about the lockbox on wheels that he takes around, sometimes without permission. I'm pretty sure he did say that. You know, he's a force to be reckoned with, but he takes it around, and some of the knives that young people are carrying, and he described, 2-foot long blades that he's starting to see now, and that there potentially is, I guess, what we'd call an arms race for weapons because of what the children are seeing each other sort of having on social media and wanting to have something bigger, I guess, for us as a status symbol. Now, one of the things he did talk about that, he was really clear on for me, thinking about my own practice, was that this isn't always gang related, and this isn't always sort of young black men who are taking part in this. And one of the most powerful things that he said for me was, he said that the victim's name is not on the blade, and that was as we were talking about, if there is a knife there, and he said, I can't remember the exact statistics, but he said that, carrying a knife actually makes you more at risk of being hurt by a knife. And again, that, that's something that stuck with me. One of the important things that he said to me about getting that message across, and something that I'll take away. And by all means, text in, join the conversation. If you want to call in and add your points, please do at this point. But he said that I needed to make a connection with the pupils and with the students, and talk to them on their level and understand and listen to them about what life was like for them. And so I could really have an impact. And so that was in the first part of the show. Now, in the second part of the show, we were talking to Mr. Beasy, and he was really giving me some tips and all of our listeners about how we can build those connections, sort of the rapport building connections. And, he talked about that honesty. He talked about listening to them and it being a two-way street, that we often, think about that balance as being the children telling us something about them. And we forget that actually, to build rapport, to build a relationship, it's a two-way street. So those two things for me have really tied together about how I can have an impact on pupils. And maybe you do too. Now, as I said at the start of the show, Croeso Abertawe, welcome to Swansea. Now, if you're listening from somewhere else in the world, you can message in and let us know where you're listening from. It is always interesting to find out where people are listening from. Obviously, I said at the very start of the show about what things are like for us in Basingstoke, where I am during the week, where I teach. And I said that, of 27 primary schools in Basingstoke and Dean, we've currently got 15 that are reporting positive COVID cases. And of the 11 secondary schools, we've got 5 that are reporting at least one positive case. And so, that's about 50% of our schools. And so, we're certainly feeling the heat at the moment, as far as that pressure of staffing, of organising, of contact tracing. And again, the government have put out some more guidance last night. Perhaps you've read that and got a comment to be made on that. But one of the noticeable things for me about that guidance was that it was short. I was used to reading 140 pages of guidance on what we had to do for COVID, and a 16-page document sort of came out. Maybe you've read it. Maybe you've got some ideas about it. Now, of course, it'd be remiss of me not to mention that you can visit our website at ttradio.org and see all of our Teachers Talk Radio podcasts and live shows, and you can listen to them anytime on Listen Back. I was listening before the show to Harry Waters, one of my favourites actually. I listened to him before I come on, and he had an amazing guest on talking about the importance of storytelling in teaching, and so actually I did miss the second half of that, so I am going to be going back later and tracking back on ttradio.org and listening back to the end of Harry's show, because I did miss the end there because I was obviously loading up and getting my notes ready for my guests. One of the things that I also wanted to talk about just at the end, we've had quite a thought-provoking and a tough kind of show from that point of view, particularly hearing some of those messages that Anthony was giving us about knife crime at the start. And I've had something really positive this week, and I put out a tweet about leadership being difficult, but when you get to say something good about your team, it's actually an absolute honour. And I was lucky enough. This year we have in Basingstoke, where I work in the week, we have what are called the Hampshire Education Awards, and I was fortunate enough to be able to nominate 3 of the teachers from my school for Hampshire Education Awards, and they were so well received, the work that they'd done by the people at the Hampshire Education Awards, that all 3 have been shortlisted. And so this week we've been having meetings with the judges to talk about our applications. Maybe you've been nominated for an award. Maybe you want to message in and let us know what that feels like. I certainly know as the nominator that it was a wonderful feeling. And I got to sit there and talk to the judges about something that was so positive. And for me, the end of this year, I don't know, maybe that's what we all need to do, is we need to go into what normally is performance management, but actually go into, I guess, kind of maybe a celebration management at the end of this year. If you disagree with me, call in. If you think we should be tying those teachers down to their targets and asking why they didn't get 100% in their areas, maybe that is the way that you want to go. But for me, I think, being able to celebrate, particularly after such a hard year, being able to celebrate the hard work, the excellent work of some of our team was something that brought me a lot of joy this week. And as I say, we've been going through this COVID wave, dare I say, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but we've been going through this, and one of the things that I think has made my week so much better has been that opportunity to say, well done. And what was even more amazing about it, and for me, maybe it's something we don't think about enough, is I'd written these nominations, as they're called, these nominations. I'd written them and sent them off, but I got to say those things virtually, because we had to do them remotely over the screen, to the judges, but with the other person present. And I think to see staff hearing that about themselves, and then to have the judge echo it back about their work, was something really special. So if you've been nominated for an award, hit that call-in button, let us know, text message in, or if you think that actually, do you know what, because I have spoken to people who have said, actually, do you know what, awards are just vanity. Maybe that's your point of view. Maybe you think awards are just vanity and we shouldn't be doing it. You're just doing a job. Awards are for movie stars. Maybe you think differently. Well, for me, as I say, I think if there's something to celebrate it, whether it's children or whether it's staff, we need to celebrate it. And so, the process was write down a couple of pages about what this staff member's done. And that for me, was an amazing feeling to reflect on that. And then I emailed it off to the judges and also sent it to the staff. And that again was an amazing feeling for them just to be nominated, I think, or at least that's what they said to me. Maybe you'll disagree. Maybe you'll think it's, it's not. But that was, an amazing point to get to there. And then a couple of weeks go by, and we get the email saying, this person's been shortlisted. And so we get that second wave of, wow, that's amazing. But the call, the opportunity to have someone visit our classrooms, which was something we used to do a lot before COVID. We used to have visitors, and maybe you've been to other schools and walked around and been impressed. I certainly have. That's something that I used to love doing, and we've certainly had people come in and do that and come around and be impressed, and you get a buzz from it, from showing good practice. But it felt like that again, and it felt like that to sit down with staff members and talk about all the things that they had done well. And so I think for me, maybe something that I want to make sure that I do next year maybe something that we should all think about doing more of, is celebrating. I know as teachers, maybe you'll disagree, maybe you are always a next step kind of person, but for me, sometimes there doesn't need to be a next step. Sometimes it was good enough just to celebrate it. And actually, I think what I'd like to do next year is find time for myself and the team to just say, yeah, that was good. That was good. Well done. That was good. Not that was good. Here's the next step, or 2 stars and a wish. Just that was good enough. As I say, I can see lots of people joining us in the studio. If you want to message in and say where you're from, I'm really interested to see where you're from, or if you want to call in. We had, of course, Mr. Beasy talking about confidence of speaking and motivation, and for speaking out loud, and the importance of that as a skill. Maybe you want to call in now and try it out. Maybe this will be your first time calling in, and we'll get to hear you talking live on the radio after hearing Mr. Beasy give us all those tips about rapport building. But as I say, the week for me has been a mixture of COVID-related absences, track and trace that have been hard, and I think that is where all teachers are at the moment, a hard time of real challenges, facing some pressure in the media, about the kind of work we do, or whether we're working hard enough, or whether we're closing bubbles too early. So we've been facing that. And as I say, the thing that has made my week, or the thing that has got me through, has been this opportunity to celebrate staff, and with people from outside of the school. So I would certainly advise that. Now, we are coming up into the last few minutes of the show. And so what I'd like to do is just to recap for you my top parts from the show. We certainly have been given a lot to think about by Big Ant in the first half. He talked about, well, just as a man himself, his drive and his motivation. He struggled at school himself, and I can relate to that in some ways. He got himself his degree, he got himself a first, he said, and a master's, and he went on to give something back to the community. And what he gave back, he saw that there was a need for something to challenge knife crime. And as I said, I related to that because in the area that I work in Swansea, in Wales, we're seeing a spike in knife crime. And so there is something that we need to do. And as a community and as teachers, there is a way that we can step in. And he said that relating to children, and he could relate to them because, he had an understanding. And he even said that then actually that, I could relate to them if I found that way to understand them. And actually, one of the most powerful things that he said for me was that if I listen to them, they'll want to talk and they'll want to share, and then I will be able to understand. And I think that's maybe something that gets overlooked. Maybe I've been looking for the answers in professionals and in research documents. Maybe actually the answers are there in the children themselves. And then obviously after that, we spoke to Mr. Beasy, and Mr. Beasy was fabulous at giving me some top tips about being able to relate to the children, to build rapport with the children, so that I can get those messages across in a more powerful way, and also explain to them that there is, his phrase was, no grind, no glory. That actually there is hard work that goes into something, and also that the goal can be something simple like making your mum proud, as opposed to having a Ferrari. And for me, those were my top tips from the show. Now, obviously, this week on Teachers Talk Radio, there have been many other shows, and there will be more shows this evening, whether you're watching the football or not. And of course, you can listen back at any time on ttradio.org, where you'll be able to find all our shows from the week and further back as well. And there have been some fabulous ones on this week. So I do recommend that you go and check that out. Whilst you're there, you can, of course, sign up to our Teachers Talk Radio newsletter, and so you can receive updates and bulletins and advice, and there is an agony aunt section, lots in there to enjoy, so I do recommend you sign up for that. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter, on Facebook. I myself am on Twitter, a lot, probably too much. So I will see you there. If you want to interact with us at Teachers Talk Radio, you can join us. So that is all from me. Hwyl fawr, goodbye. Thank you, diolch yn fawr. And that is my incidental Welsh for today. Nos da, good night. I'm going to play our fade out music, and I will see you just on the other side.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.
Nos da pawb. Good night, everyone.